after working on this video for 3 days, I now feel completely different about this whole circumstance than I originally did, because when I started, I was under the delusion this was all about love or romance or something like that, when in reality, this is all about power, perversion of power, and I'm pretty sure I can prove it. Daddy Nettie only got his dick hard when there was some sort of risk involved in it. That is my supposition. That is what I am alleging in this scenario. Hi, my name is Erin Moriarty, and welcome to my channel, where today we're going to be discussing the continued fallout of the Ned Fulmer cheating scandal. Now, if you're not aware, the Try Guys, in addition to the video statement that they posted on their main channel, they did a slightly longer than an hour-long podcast. I want to start off this video by really briefly going over everything that was covered in that video, because I know a lot of people are not going to have time to watch the entire podcast. Then, because I'm trying to learn from this experience and teach others from this experience, I want to go through some clips of Ned, some red flags that I've noticed, things that we can learn from, so we don't make the same mistakes again, so we don't make the same mistakes in our life. The podcast today was just Keith and Zach and Miles. Eugene is probably no longer going to be doing the podcasts. The first big takeaway was that between the three of them, there were some big weight gains and weight losses, and one of the first things that they mentioned was just the physical toll that the emotional stress had. And this has been a theme of my content for a while, is that a lot of people want to act like emotions and emotional damage and emotional harm is not that important. Emotional damage can cause serious physical consequences, and I think the guys are just really starting to understand how true that is right now. Zach, in particular, had noted that his physical pain, his back pain, was really severe during this past month, and as somebody who is disabled, I can attest, whenever I'm going through something that is very emotionally stressful, there is physical pain. And that's one of the reasons that I want to do this video, because there's been so much fallout, so much harm that was caused by Ned's actions, and I really want people to understand that, because if it just stops one person from cheating in their life, it'll be worth it for me. They had to hire an HR rep. Obviously, Ned was acting as HR. They obviously found out about this Labor Day weekend, as they had previously alluded. Zach had said a couple of times that they didn't really have a lot of emotional time to process because it was really just busy, especially the first couple of weeks when they were working on the phone with lawyers all the time. Keith was on tour with Lou Burger, so he couldn't say anything for a week because they were really trying to keep things under wraps until the investigation was complete. But they both said that they were listening to a lot of Olivia Rodrigo, which is kind of funny because the video that I was supposed to have out tomorrow was about that. That video is going to be postponed to next week. Zach had mentioned a lyric in particular of Olivia Rodrigo's that was apropos. You betrayed me, and I know that you'll never feel sorry. Sorry, that's my bad singing. I've kind of been wondering if Ned really fully understands the gravity of the cause that he's harmed, or the harm that he's caused, and that just makes me wonder. At the beginning, they were mostly discussing a lot of the emotional impact that they had, and one of the things that was most stressful for them was that they were caught off of social media, that they really couldn't post anything, especially once people started getting suspicious. Pretty much from the get-go, there was suspicion. From the very beginning, they had to be cautious that A, they weren't shit posting on social media and acting like it wasn't of any importance, because they knew people were going to go back and look at it, but also they couldn't say anything that was pertinent to what was going on either. They described it as a deep shock. Keith said it was every stage of grief over and over and over again, like a circle. As soon as he would get through each stage of grief, he would end up at the beginning again. They were afraid of a lot of their future. Zach has a short film that he's going to be trying to work on for the festival scene, and Lou Burger has an off-Broadway show that they're working on, and they were both concerned that it wasn't just going to be Ned and the Try Guys and all of those things that went down, but also all of the projects outside of the Try Guys that were going to be impacted as well. They had no idea how bad the fallout was going to be. Keith had said that one of the things that made it particularly hard was that 3 days prior, everything was really good. Keith was so happy, fulfilled, and grateful. It was right after the show had released. It was a lifetime high for him. He was really excited about the Lou Burger tour and the Lou Burger musical. Zach finally felt that their workflow and their system of balancing their Try Guys projects and their off Try Guys projects was finally getting into a good rhythm, because initially they were having a hard time balancing all of their differing urges and schedules and things like that. They were aware of the fan awareness, because obviously there were pictures that were sent by fans, but there was the awareness that this knowledge was out in there, and there was basically as an uncertain stick of dynamite with a fuse of indeterminate length, had no idea how much dynamite was going to go off and how bad. They knew it was out there from the beginning, and they were glad that the people who took these pictures did the right thing and sent them to the partners instead of going mega public initially. When the shit hit the fan this past week, when everybody started to find out and this meant mega viral, they were actually in Palm Springs for a YouTube thing. On Sunday, they had seen on Reddit that kind of things were starting to go off, and they had started preparing for the PR statement, and they had notified all of the people involved that, hey, this is probably going to escalate soon. Now, what they didn't expect was the level of mass media coverage, and it was kind of like a bittersweet thing, because like, it's always cool to realize that you have this much impact on people, and they didn't realize that it wasn't just their current viewers. All of these people that had seen videos of them since 2014 were coming out of the woodwork to say that they were grieving because they felt, you know, betrayed and hurt by this whole situation. And on the one hand, it was great because they were seeing how many fans truly love what they were doing, but on the other hand, so many of these people were now wondering if the whole thing had been a lie, if they had all known, if they had all been lying, because they had kind of had the reputation of being unproblematic boys, and that was really hard for a lot of people. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of their fans are people that come from a broken home. A lot of their fans do not know people that are happy in their marriage or in their relationships in real life, and they went to the Try Guys, to Ned and Keith and Zach as examples of great men that were in relationships, and this obviously was particularly hard for those people who already had such a hard time believing in love. And obviously there's a ton of things that they want to say but can't say, and there's a lot of things that they want to do quickly but can't do quickly because of the legal red tape, and unfortunately the legal red tape that makes things take time also makes it difficult for them to talk about it, which makes sense. As somebody who's worked in a lot of corporate environments, you have to be very careful. There are probably numerous grounds for lawsuits from several people, both Alex from saying either that she felt pressured, that she felt her promotions were contingent on it, or for her peers for feeling that they were not set up for equal success because they weren't boinking Ned. There's so many scenarios that could set them up for harm, and I'm glad that they chose to do this the responsible way and keep as much detail off the record as possible. They were very cognizant the whole time that there were a lot of people who had been emotionally harmed by Ned's actions, and they did not want those people to get further harmed. They knew that the bigger this blew up, the more it was going to blow up on presumably Alex and Ariel as well, because they were basically alluding to the fact that Alexandria had received death threats. They said people involved had received death threats, and realistically, there is no circumstance that justifies that. I don't care what she did in this situation. There's no justification to wishing her that degree of harm. And one of the other things that they were cognizant of is that if the Try Guys get sued, it's not really Keith and Eugene and Zach that suffer, it's their employees, because realistically, if they want to create a channel on their own and have their own following after the Try Guys, they can. But if the Try Guys get sued and they lose a lot of their money, that's probably going to come in the form of their employees' wages, and they were really cognizant of trying to keep their employees as safe as possible, which really meant a lot to me as a fan, as somebody who has supported them for a long time. Another thing that was difficult was that they really couldn't tell their staff anything. They could just say that Ned was taking some time away from work for personal reasons, and that he was going to need to be edited out of some videos. The staff knew that there was an investigation going on, and the staff has the internet, so they eventually figured out, but they could not communicate to the staff during this time. Miles did say that he and the rest of the staff were confident that the reason that they weren't talking was because it was important, and that they didn't feel like there was any lack of transparency, but you know, they understood the red tape and the bureaucracy. They weren't allowed to say that Ned was gone until after the review had completed, but it seemed like they had kind of resolved basically right away that they were going to get rid of him. They just needed to do so in a way that was going to prevent them from getting sued. They also said that despite all of this, the office morale somehow managed to be pretty good, all things considered. So they already have all of the content for the rest of the year filmed, which is kind of why their statement was what it was. And at the end of the year, they're going to reevaluate what the Try Guys look like and what their content is going to look like, because they made some very valid points. There is content that they made in the past, or styles of content that they made in the past, that are going to be very questionable to do in a newly heightened lens. I think anything where they're not wearing a lot of clothes involved around their employees, probably not going to be the best. And now this may end up being a mixed blessing, Zach had basically said that in the past they had all wanted to do Try Guys stuff, but it also had a lot of projects they wanted to do outside of Try Guys. And Zach's belief is that now maybe some of those exterior projects can be done within the Try Guys umbrella, which makes me wonder if maybe Ned was turning down some of his projects in the past. One of the reasons that I stopped watching their content initially was because I felt that Ned was very dismissive of Zach, especially, but sometimes also Eugene, particularly anything that Eugene is interested in that strays classically feminine. Like when Eugene was like astrology content, Ned was very rude. And I have a theory about that. We'll get to that later. Incredibly stressful for all of them. Like I alluded to further, it took an extreme physical and emotional take out of all of them. It made Keith's anxiety about going out in public even worse because he was concerned that people were going to come up to him and ask him about it and he can't say anything about it. Zach had actually said that he was supposed to go, that he had some weddings that he had to attend, and somebody came up to him at one of the weddings like last week and was talking to him about it as though he wasn't like aware of the situation, even though that person knew who he was. It was very weird based on the way he described it. Zach had also indicated that his whole TikTok feed was about him and this scenario, so even his usual escapism was not escapism. And as somebody with a disability, it's really difficult that like when I'm physically ill and I can't move around much, I very heavily rely on social media. Basically, no matter what you do, it's hard to say that this is an appropriate punishment. This meaning all of the media focus and scrutiny that is on all of the involved parties. They also said that it is really hard for people outside to understand what it is like when not just everybody is talking about you in the media, but like people that you don't know are talking to your friends and your family about the things that they're reading about you in the media, whether those things are true or not. And it makes you feel like no one likes you. And that's one reason that they really didn't want it to blow up as big as it did, because they wanted to try and protect the people involved from this. Zach understands that they kind of feel like people feel like the well has been tainted, that people are valid and okay to grieve over this, to feel hurt, to feel betrayed. You're allowed to care about creators that you like. And I do see the parasocial nature of these arguments, but also it's more than just parasocial. People have been watching them for 8 years and they share so much of their life. And to have someone do something that seems that far opposite, it just really makes you wonder, especially with so many other people doing the same thing at the same time. It really makes you wonder about other people in your life. And like, I do think that some people have way too much parasocial attachment, but I also think that way too many people just don't give enough of a damn about other people. I think people in general are not caring and compassionate enough about other people. Liking people is not a step in the wrong direction. Something that they had said and that I really want to stress as well is that you really should never feel like dumb or like bad because you didn't notice it. This is my opinion, not theirs. When you like somebody, when you trust somebody, when you want to see the best in somebody, you can have some really glaring evidence telling you otherwise in your face, and your brain just is not capable of processing that evidence, that information as what it is, because your brain just cannot process the idea of that person betraying you. And I think that's what's happened to a lot of the people involved in this. I do think that some of the lower staff people at the Try Guys staff did suspect something was going on. I think maybe the guys saw things from time to time and they're like, oh, well, that's fishy, and they probably laughed it off as if you were anybody other than Ned, I would think that's weird. And that's another learning point. Like, one of my big takeaways from this, one of my big learning points is, if there is a guy that you only trust because of his significant other, like, because realistically, most people would not trust Ned without Ariel in the picture. And what I've realized is that if I wouldn't trust somebody without their significant other in the picture, I'm not trusting them with the significant other in the picture either. Zach had stated that he felt like 8 years of his legacy was gone at first, and I think it's really tempting to see that. And I think society kind of puts this idea in your head that if anything that you put a lot of your time and effort into isn't like your end game, if your relationship isn't going to end in a marriage, it's worthless. If your job isn't going to end up in a career, it's worthless. But they did so much, they grew so much in those 8 years, so much more than I think any of them could have done on their own. And it's really fallacy to ignore the 8 years of hard work and effort that they put into this just because Ned was a piece of crap at the end. I think it's going to make people reflect differently on their legacy, and I think this is going to make the 3 remaining Try Guys a lot stronger. Zach had basically said that pretty much the past month, his entire life has been dedicated to this. He hasn't done his wedding planning at all. He hadn't been able to get his dishwasher fixed, and it wasn't until yesterday that he and Maggie just finally sat down and were like, we need to get our life back on track. And I really hope that they can, because I know that Ned was supposed to be a prominent part of his wedding, and I know that it's going to be bittersweet going into a wedding after this kind of a scenario. One of the other things that they had said about their plans going forward is that yes, there are financial issues that are going to come into play. They feel very irresponsible wasting money at this period of time given everything that's happened. I assume that this has been pretty expensive for them based on what they have said. They finally went into like a rapid fire round of questioning where they went over some of the bigger questions. They did not work with Ned on the statements. They sent their statement that the Try Guys was going to use to Ned, and Ned made his statement in the same font. Keith believes on purpose, and I kind of believe on purpose too, to make it look like they were in agreement. They have not edited him out of older videos, just new videos that were posted since the beginning of September. There were 2 videos that they put on private because they felt insensitive. Their editing team is phenomenal. I think we are only going to continue to see that, and I'm really glad that they will continue to have jobs. With regards to You Can Sit With Us, Ariel is going to be taking some time for herself. They're going to notify us if and when that changes. If this would not have gone public, they would have still fired Ned, but they would not have gone into so much detail as to why. Basically, from the moment they realized that he was in a relationship with a coworker, something they had stated in the past was against the rules, and we'll get to that. There's some clips of that in a couple minutes. They are a brand that has values, and they wish to reaffirm to their audience that they still have those values, and they wouldn't be doing that if they kept Ned around in any capacity. For the past 2 years, Zach had kind of accepted that their goals and his were different, but this he's seeing as an option to be more fluid with the Try Guys goals in the future. They were also asked if they were going to add a Try Guy, and I know that this is going to be controversial, but I kind of agree with their decision. They don't want to put anybody in the position of having to fill Ned's shoes, and I think that's a great idea. I think it would be a lot of pressure if they promoted somebody officially to like another Try Guy. One of the things that they had also pointed out was that when they were initially established as the Try Guys, they used to just be normal guys doing unusual things, but as time has passed and they've done so many things, they have become less normal, basically. When it comes to videos like their old classic style, like guys trying things videos, they want it to be a newer crew of different people who don't have the same breadth of experiences that they do. So it's more relatable to the audience, and also so the audience gets to see different perspectives. So let's talk about the true cost of Ned's actions, all things considered, because we just discussed about all of the extra work that all of his peers had to do, the fact that they were afraid that they were going to miss out on everything, even things that Ned wasn't involved in, the fact that Zach actually had physical pain because of Ned's fucking dumbass. One of the things that I haven't seen enough commentary people talk about, and I think this is just because they're not big enough of fans to realize this, is just how much Ariel has sacrificed for Ned. So Ariel and Ned got married in 2012 before he was involved with BuzzFeed, back when he was a chemist. So she marries him, he's a chemist, right? And then he's like, you know what, I want to go work for BuzzFeed. So he goes off and works for BuzzFeed. So she puts her whole life and plans aside to move across the country, or halfway country. I think they were living in Florida at the time, to move from wherever they're living to California for his BuzzFeed career. She gets pregnant with their first baby, and he's like, yes, we're gonna leave BuzzFeed now and leave the health insurance that you have and start up our own company. If you watch their documentary, it really becomes clear that Ned realized Eugene and Zach and Keith were the talent in his meal ticket, and that he could not afford to lose them. And when Eugene was like, my contract with BuzzFeed is over, I'm gonna do my own thing, Ned's like, oh shit, I need to come up with a way to keep these guys together so I can have my comedy troupe of my dreams. And then she has 2 of his kids. He leaves on a tour. She's like cleaning the house and doing the laundry and watching both of his kids while he's fucking his coworker. How many nights was Ariel taking care of the kids while he was fucking his subordinate? Literally how many nights? Ariel sacrificed so much for him so many times, and he realized that she was out of his league, and yet he still pulled this crap. And I think he was really insecure about the fact that he was out of her league, or that she was out of his league. And I think he realized that she was out of his league. And I think that that's one of the things that he was really bothered by. And that's one of the things that made it so easy for him to find comfort in the arms of his much younger coworker. Ned is 35. To best of my ability to find out, Alexandria is somewhere between 22 and 26. I can't figure out what her age is. Like, I'm 7 years older than Zach, and I feel like a dirty perv for having a crush on Zach. But he was having an affair with her, and she's probably around about 10 years younger than him. And it's funny because one of the interesting topics that came up on the podcast was like how much she was into partying and things like that in comparative to the rest of them, and how she would do shots and everybody else like couldn't keep up with her. I really think that he just was very insecure about himself and about his age, and he found his mental security not from therapy or from any of the things that he should have found his security from, but rather in the absolute worst possible place. Betraying the woman who had put aside everything for him, betraying the friends who had devoted 8 of their lives to a career working with him. They have 20 employees working for them who are all involved in this in some way. People that weren't even involved in this were getting hate messages because people thought they were involved in this.
Hey, are you guys working things out?
Yeah.
You are?
Working things out.
So, insofar as I know, paparazzi are not in the habit of following around YouTube personalities. And I know that people are gonna come at me and be like, well, they're following TikTokers around all the time. We're pretty sure that the TikTokers that are followed around by paparazzi call the paparazzi on themselves, especially based on the conversations that they have. So my suspicion and my allegation, I do not have the proof, but my allegation is that this was a paparazzi walk that was planned by Ned's PR. It basically has all of the classic recipe of like perfectly PR orchestrated moments. First of all, you've got the lighting on Ariel making her look beautiful and angelic and bathed in light, and him, by his proximity with her and by the fact that she hasn't left him, that conveys a certain amount of belief. Like, hey,
there's this woman that is so beautiful and so perfect and so radiant. She loves this guy. She trusts this guy. So should you.
He's got like pasta in his hand because, you know, they've always been known for their cooking and their recipes and their pasta night. It's just the one quick question, and you notice he does that Ned did not make any attempt to answer the question of whether you're working things out, because it can't come from Ned's mouth. That looks manipulative. If it comes out of Ariel's mouth, it looks better, even though her response was so hesitant. We're working on working things out. That is so, she put an extra level, like not we're working things out, not yes, we're working things out, we're working on working things out. There have been so many moments where Ned has shown his true colors, and that's gonna be our next section.
For sure, what we've all known, Ariel, you're out of my league.
So know what you're thinking your wife is out of your league, that's a red flag. And that in and of itself is not really a red flag. That coupled with a lot of other things that we're going to look at is a red flag. Insecurity that doesn't get addressed over a long period of time, in my experience, is one of the things can be a catalyst for cheating in these long-term relationships. There were a lot of signs with Ned that Ned really needed outside approval and validation from others. That coupled with insecurity can lead to somebody who is led astray by simple virtue of the fact that someone is young and interested. Especially because Ned is a man that seems to have comparatively fairly conservative values.
Ned slutted it up hard.
Okay, well, I think we don't have much more time in this video, so we should probably sign off.
And also, I'm not going to say that slutting it up in the past is a necessary indicator that you're going to cheat in the future. The fact that he's ashamed of it, though, that he like never wants to talk about his past, even though he has a past, is kind of weird, though. In my experience, people that have like gotten past their slut era and have moved on to their family era are okay to talk about it and joke about it, and it's fine. It's not a sensitive subject anymore. It's the people that are like inclined to stray, or the people that get weird about it when their past is brought up. Then this next clip is the first of 2 incidents that I found where one of the guys had referenced the fact that fucking their subordinates would be illegal, and in fact, it was Ned who referenced the fact that it was illegal. Ned rushed to indicate that it was illegal, in fact.
I'm gonna marry my coworkers because I'm committed to the work that we do together, and I'm also uncomfortable telling the people that we employ toy that I want to sleep with them.
Right. It's illegal.
It's illegal.
When I look at Ned's situation, I look at how there were so many other ways that he could have gotten his dick wet without risking literally everything that he and his friends and his family had worked years for, almost a decade for. And that leads me to believe that there is something about the power imbalance that made him more interested in Alexandria. A lot of times it is not just sex and affection and attraction that leads men to cheat, it is also power and power imbalances. And that plus some of the things that have happened since Ned has left, like using the same font as the Try Guys in their messaging, to reanalyzing his behavior in a totally new light just makes me very sus of a lot of things that he's said and done.
Do you have any exes at your weddings? I always feel like that's kind of weird sometimes. I did.
I had to tell Ned that he could not invite an ex.
Oh.
He did actually invite like some people that he had hooked up with, and I probably did too. But there was one in particular that was very close to when we met. There was just a little bit of sort of weirdness around it, and I was like, I would really appreciate it if this person was not at our wedding.
That's another thing that leads me to believe that power dynamic is part of it, because there's something that I've noticed about these men that like having a woman that makes them look good, and one of the things that they like is they like showing off to their exes how much better they're doing now, and having your exes come to your wedding is something that really validates that, in my opinion.
Ned, you fought valiantly, but with only 2 points, that leaves you with the world's worst boss.
I don't like this at all.
The world's worst boss thing, like, it's not so much that he scored the worst, it's that he didn't seem to know anything about anybody at all that worked for them, and that just level of detachment, it doesn't show I'm the busy separated boss. It shows I don't care about any of you because you're subordinate to me.
I'm making something for my actual baby, but I'm gonna give it to Ariel because really a present for Wes is a present for Ariel.
A gift for my son is a gift for my wife. He's supposed to be Mr. Romance. This is a Valentine's Day present. Like, if it was like a Mother's Day present, sure, I could go for it, but this is Valentine's Day, and you could tell in Ariel's reaction that she was not happy with it either. And this again is one of those scenarios where it's not like an individual thing that somebody says, it's all of the things that they say put together. And I really get the vibe that ever since Ariel became a mom, he just sees Ariel as a mom and has completely forgotten that she has an entire identity outside of her maternity. And I think that that's really clear in the fact that he had done the biological clock comment with Rainey, the idea that a woman might want to do something with her life that doesn't involve maternity at any point was just like mind-boggling to him, which again goes back to the whole theory that I have. He's fairly conservative, just hides it because he has a single gay bestie. I think it should be pretty clear by the number of outfit and location changes that we've had that this video has thrown me for a complete freaking loop, because I think every time that I'm done, something else happens. These next clips are a little bit longer, but they give us a lot of interesting insights about Ned and Ariel's relationship that I think are pretty telling about Ned's character. For this first clip, I want you to pay really close attention to the different way that Ned talks about his partner versus the way the other Try Guys talk about their partners.
She likes collating things. She likes to streamline things in the refrigerator. So I'm constantly, like, just besieged by things randomly being moved to other places that are quote-unquote more organized, and leftovers that have gotten, in her eyes, too old, thrown out.
Oh, that's the worst thing you can do to Ned is get rid of leftover meat.
You threw out my thing?
In the same way, I'm like, Becky organized everything, and it makes sense where it is. I never would have done all those things, so Becky, I know you're watching and listening, I greatly appreciate it.
Our partners are right.
Yes. Yeah.
There's
and we
no
don't
world
like
that
it.
we are right in this clean situation.
Yeah. Like it.
Again, now, mine perfectly good leftover.
So Ariel actually discussed this clip on You Can Sit With Us, so we know exactly how she feels about it, and unfortunately it is definitely not good.
I swear he talked the entire time about how clean his house is because of Becky.
He knows what's good for him.
I seriously, I was listening to the entire episode waiting for my damn turn. I was like, when is Ned going to say how great I am at cleaning? And how thankful he is that I do all the work around the house.
Instead, he said you throw out his leftovers.
Exactly. Exactly. Because I clean out the refrigerator and I throw out the nasty leftovers.
That's so nice.
And
she seemed disappointed, hurt, and honestly like she was pushing back tears. Ariel expected one thing. Since the other Try Guys were describing their partners in a manner that was so respectful, and since she knows she does so many things for Ned, she was expecting this to be a moment where he regaled the rest of the guys about my wife, because he's the wife guy, right? But when it actually comes to it, when they're discussing the meat and potatoes of relationships, what does he do? He complains about like the one very minor thing that she does that he doesn't like. And honestly, this seems like an argument that has come up a lot of times before based on the way that both of them talk about it.
Mad
It is so
because
nice of
he
you.
thinks that like I threw away his meat because I don't like meat. What? What is that? What is that?
Ariel slowly just.
Now it seems from these clips that Ariel does the lion's shares of the chores around the house. Like sure, Ned does cook, but it seems like the large majority of the rest of the things fall to her purview. And I get that. Like some families, that's just how chores work and that works for them. But it really doesn't feel like it's working for Ariel based on how she's acting in these clips. And I mean, at least at bare minimum, it seems like Ariel expects him to notice and respect and at least acknowledge that she's doing all of these things so he can have his career and his life and all of those things. But I think because he has very, like I said, kind of conservative, patriarchal viewpoints about life and marriages, it's almost like he expects her to do these things. He expects her to be the mom. He expects her to do the laundry. He expects her to do these things. And thus he doesn't really think it's something that he needs to notice when she does, because they're just her job. And honestly, I'm really curious how their marriage would have worked if she wouldn't have fallen into those traditional roles and done the traditional chores. Like if she would have been like, hey, I'm making a lot of money as an interior designer. I need you to be a stay-at-home dad, or I need you to do more chores around the house. What would the perspective have been there?
I love my husband so much, but I was so disappointed. Like I wasn't even mad. I was just like, well, why does he not think that I clean?
Just leave his,
I feel
leave
like I
his
clean
laundry.
all the damn time. Leave his laundry
we
out.
know,
Don't do it.
a whole
We all
laundry
know. We all know
episode.
you. The audience knows you. We know.
Not only is this an argument that they've had before, it's an argument that Ned doesn't seem to fundamentally understand. He doesn't understand why she's upset about it. Again, I think because he assumes that that's part of her job, and the fact that she's doing her job in a way that I almost feel like he, as her husband, feels like he's her boss in a way, and like that's why he feels comfortable to critique her job of throwing away his leftovers. I personally have a chore philosophy that I call help or hush. Do not tell me how to do the chore unless you are going to help in some physical manner. Giving advice is not helping. Again, Ariel just seems so disappointed by all of this too.
No. I am doing the laundry of 4 humans.
Bless
And your heart. Bless your heart. I do not. I do the girls' laundry, and our nanny helps with that.
Yeah.
And I do my laundry, and Watts is on his fucking own.
Stop it.
I grew up in a household where my parents did their laundry separately. My dad would get very upset if anyone ever touched his laundry. Oh no, I used to do mine and Watts' laundry. I'm very interested. How did this conversation go with Watts?
Oh,
where,
I just
where
like
you asked him to do his own.
She just seems absolutely mind blown by the fact that the other guy's partners, like the other guys do laundry, that men do laundry, and she doesn't even know how to approach the conversation with him. And I think that's telling too. I think a lot of how their marriage was able to work the way that it worked is because he had a very, this is what the wife does, this is what the husband does sort of expectation. Because Ariel was not the type of woman to buck him on that, it was never a problem. This is why you have to ask questions, like inquire when people are saying that their marriage is good. Like ask them about who handles the chores, ask them about how the partners handle the thermostat and snoring and like the real world situations, the day-to-day things, not the romantic parts like the proposal and the wedding and those things, which he doesn't even do that well. And it's just so very frustrating that so many people think that marriages and relationships work this way. It shouldn't have to be a tense situation to ask your partner, hey, can you do some of the laundry because now that we have 2 kids, I'm feeling overwhelmed. Ned went to Yale. Ned has been surrounded by rich and powerful men, and I think from that, he realized that one of the biggest things that is fundamental to the success of a man who is trying to move up in the world is to have a woman that stays at home and does all of the chores and cares for the children and doesn't complain, even when you have a midlife crisis and go off and F your subordinate.
Laundry. I don't even think I asked him. I just think I stopped.
You just didn't put it in the laundry.
I just didn't put it in the laundry. One day he was like,
it's a mountain.
yeah, one day he was like, wow, a lot of laundry. I was like, yeah, you should wash that. That's amazing. And so
I think it's particularly telling based on the way, the finality, the way that the other Try Guys talk about him, the disgust that they air, that they are aware of the fact that there was a power dynamic as well and that Ned enjoyed that power dynamic. I think there are a lot of things that they can't say, but I think there's a lot of things that seem, at least to me, anecdotally, evident between the lines that they are frustrated by the deception that this man has caused. This is so far beyond just cheating on your wife. This is constructing an elaborate persona to hide the fact that you have not grown as a person since college, and using that persona to get rich and famous, and then for that whole lie of a facade persona to be broken when you and your inevitable love of power dynamics and just being the Yaleist frat boy bro that ever Yale frat boy broed have to bang your subordinate. So we have this Yale frat boy with all of these powerful friends, including lawyers, who he keeps distinctly separate from his group of friends that he does his career and his art and his wife guy stuff with. Historically, he's always played the act of, my wife is settling for me, so we've kind of thought that he didn't think too highly about himself, and I think secretly he didn't think too highly about himself, so I think a lot of things have actually been overcompensation. When somebody deliberately brings focus to something, often it is a compensation mechanism. They feel insecure about that thing, and they think that if they deliberately focus on it too much, other people will just assume that they are good at that thing. And in this case, that is exactly what has happened. We have assumed that he is good at wife guying, but clearly he is not, because good wife guys don't cheat on their wives. Like, we've seen early videos of Ned's. His Yale graduation video, he's got a full-ass popped collar. He looks like a full-on douche. But there have just been too many things that have happened after the fact that have made me really suspicious, like the whole angel walk, like using the same font, like the whole SNL thing, when we know that he has powerful Yale writer friends that work at SNL. While Ned has only said one thing publicly since things have broken, we can interpret a lot from the things that his PR has been doing around him. And sure, this is alleged. We don't know for a fact that he's behind all of these things. However, what we do know is that there's a hell of a lot of coincidences, and I'm a Taylor Swift fan, so I don't necessarily believe in them. Ned was aggressively aware of the inappropriateness of the relationship. If Ned was just looking to get his dick wet, as I've stated before, there are tons of ways that he could have done it without jeopardizing his entire freaking life. There is a marginally small chance that Alexandria is a woman that he loves above all of that and is worth all of that. But if that was the case, he wouldn't be with Ariel right now. He would be with Alexandria. I don't even know if I'm in the frame. Since he's not with Alexandria, we can infer that this was not about true love. What else would he possibly be about? Obviously, the next most reasonable subject is power and abuse of power, because this is patently a power relationship. What, in my mind, dictates a power relationship? First off, a lot of times it's very visible but under the surface. There were a lot of hints that something was going on with Alexandria. We have seen that in the clip compilations that are coming up on YouTube and Twitter and TikTok right now. There are a lot of men that are in it for the risk, and Ned has the classic personality type, that Class A achiever type personality that tends to be driven to risk-taking behavior. And I said in my previous video that especially people who don't have a lot of marginalization in their life, who don't have a lot of legitimate risk in their life, they often take on artificial risks in doing things like adrenaline junkie behavior, or in this case, cheating on your wife in a very visible public manner. Again, the very visible public manner that they did this in suggests to me that this was a power relationship. If he was in love with her, if he cared for her, he would want to do anything to protect him. But yet, where was he? He was at a bar, and I don't know if any of you have looked at this Niagara bar, but if you look at the reviews for this place, there are like 23-year-olds who are coming out and saying that they wouldn't be caught dead at this place because this is an underage and 21 bar. Then they went to a Harry Styles concert. And look, I'm not saying a 35-year-old man can't like a Harry Styles concert. However, it's just a very childish, youthful, I'm going through a midlife crisis thing to do. Daddy Nettie only got his dick hard when there was some sort of risk involved in it. That is my supposition. That is what I am alleging in this scenario. I also predict that he is going through an early midlife crisis, hence all of this youthful type behavior. I think a lot of people who get married young and truncate their whore phase early before they're entirely ready to truncate their whore phase end in a position where they want to return to their whore phase as soon as their life gets a little bit boring in middle age. Ned knew what he was doing. He knew at bare minimum that he could risk his marriage, his children, his home, his business, and everything that he and his friends had worked for over the past nearly a decade. What he probably didn't realize was the severe mental, physical, and emotional labor that he was putting in everybody around him by putting them in the center of attention during one of the nearly certainly most terrible moments of all of their lives. And then, if what I've said is true, and he has contacted the paparazzi, and he has contacted SNL, he has done more to double down on the harm that he has caused on the people that he has hurt in his life. And honestly, if I am true in my suppositions, Ned Fulmer, there is nothing significant enough that can happen to you to ever recompense the harm you have done. Sit the fuck down, man. That's everything that I have for now. Unless there's a huge update on this front, I don't plan to do another Ned video. If there's other topics that you'd like to see me cover, please let me know in the comments down below. Everything that you do helps me out a ton, so please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.